In this video, we are going to discuss writing our first project in C++. In this case, it is in the Microsoft Visual Studio environment, but this should be basically the same across any IDE. So to start out with, we need to make sure that we have a source.cpp file open, or a source file open. And if you have any questions on how to do this, please see the previous video on creating a project in Visual Studio or in your equivalent platform. And so here we have this source.cpp, and upon double-clicking this, it will bring up this coding window, which will allow us to actually start writing C++ code. So to start out with, some of the kind of basics that we will have in almost every project this semester, whether in 1400 or 1405, is we will want to type pound include, and then we will include IOStream. And so that line of code looks just like that. And you should have this at the top of almost all of your projects. And we will go into more detail about exactly what this does later on in later videos. But basically what this lets us do is communicate with the console. It lets us put text onto the console and read text from the console. Another line of code that we will have in almost all of our projects this semester is using namespace standard. And then we terminate the line with a semicolon. What this allows us to do is it allows us to use all of the keywords that are found in the standard namespace. And this, once again, really isn't too important to know all of the details. It's just important to have this line of code so that we don't run into errors when trying to use code from the standard namespace. Now, one thing that is important to know in C++ is that every project or every program has to have a method or a function called int main. And in our case, it won't take any parameters, so you can see that we just have these empty parentheses. And then how we start and stop a function is we use curly braces. So Visual Studio 2013 is really nice for us. When we put a curly bracket, it just automatically makes another brace for us. And so then we can press enter, and it lets us start typing. And you can see that here's a closing bracket, here's an opening bracket. And so everything that we're typing is going to be inside of this little thing here, this function called int main. And so, like I said, every C++ program has a function called int main. And so how this actually works is when we go to build our project, the compiler goes and it finds main. And when we run our project goes and it finds main, and that is the first thing that it runs. And so we need to tell our program what to do, and we'll do this inside of main. And this is going to be a pretty basic program. So we'll just have a simple line of code that is just going to say hello world. And so that's going to be great. But if we take a look, let's just break this down a little bit. We have int, and you can see that it's in blue, as well as pound include using namespace. All of those are in blue. And what these are is these are called reserve words or keywords. And they are words that are already defined, they already have meaning, and they are something that we cannot change. Meaning that I can't just use the word int as a variable name. And we'll learn more about variable names in just a little bit. And so what this says right here is that I'm creating a function called main, which I don't have to pass anything, because obviously when we're starting a program, main, we're not sending anything to our program, it's just running. And it is actually going to return an integer, which is what int stands for. And the integer in this case is going to refer to any errors. And so if our program compiles and runs successfully, we want it to return a 0 because there were 0 errors. And so we're just going to have at the bottom of main here, return 0. And so now that we've built our int main, we've got return 0, we have pound include IOStream using namespace standard. This is kind of the basic template for what all of your projects should look like at the very beginning. Maybe with a few things changed. For example, you won't always use IOStream, but generally almost all of your projects should look like this at the very beginning. So just remember that #include IOStream, using namespace standard, int main, get my curly brackets there, return 0 semicolon. Now, as you can see, I have a semicolon here, and I have a semicolon here. In C++, every line of code must end in a semicolon. And so we don't have a semicolon at the end of int main because main is a function, and so it contains things inside of it. And so since it contains things inside of it, we don't put a semicolon. So now that we're inside of main, let's go ahead and we're just going to output something to the console window. And so there's another video that you can watch on cout to see exactly how it works. But basically, it just puts something to the console window. So we will put cout, and then we will put quotes, and then we will put an end line at the end. And inside of these quotes, we'll put hello world, just like this. And so you can see that I had to break up what was in quotes and what wasn't in quotes with these two little less than signs. Together, this is called the stream insertion operator, and it allows us to put multiple things to the console window at once. And so we always put cout, stream insertion operator, then whatever we're outputting. And this end L just stands for a new line, and this is all covered a bit more explicitly in the video on cout. So now that I have some code built, we need to see exactly how to run this. What do we actually do here? And so the first thing that we want to do is we can go up to either build or debug. And if we go to debug, then we just click start without debugging. And it's important that we click start without debugging, not start debugging, start without debugging. And the keyboard shortcut is Control plus F5. So do not just click F5. And to show you the difference, if we just click start debugging, first of all, it will come up and say this project is out of date. Would you like to build it? You will always want to click yes here. And I always click do not show this dialog again because this window starts to get annoying after a while because obviously you always want to build your program. And what building does is it compiles it down and it makes sure that everything has built successfully, that you've written all of the code successfully. And so I'm going to click yes. And you can see down here it says build started. And so I just ran it in debugging. And what happened? There was this window for half of a second. We didn't see anything. That was not very helpful. We don't know what just happened. That's what happens if you run it in debug mode. So don't just click F5 because once again it just does something like this. It's not helpful. But if we run it not in debug mode, so start without debugging, then it comes up and it says hello world. Press any key to continue, meaning that we've hit the end of our program. So if we press any key, our program terminates and we're brought back to Visual Studio. So once again, what we can do is we can click build, or we can just click start without debugging, which will automatically build for us. And so if I make any sort of change at all, even if I just delete a semicolon and bring it back up, then I will once again have to build my solution. Build succeeded. Then I click debug, I click start without debugging, and once again we see hello world with the text of press any key to continue. So now this should explain how to run programs from Visual Studio, as well as what your first, most basic program can look like. It's just a cout, meaning console out, hello world, end line.